Hi guys, this is Zacha from the CT Alpha 2 team. Thanks Griffin for staging this PlanetsCon Live 2021 and for the opportunity to have this short presentation on the Cognitum War, the first championship of the new league. What I am showing is going to be a very high level recap, as countless hours of planning and diplomacy cannot be reduced to a few minutes. But it may give a first impression and serve as a rough guideline for anyone reviewing this game in the future. Generally, I try to stick here to the hard facts, so there will be little speculation on other players' intentions and diplomatic battles, just good old ship-based warfare. To get started, let's have a short look at the starting position for each race. On 1, we have the Rebels, 2 o'clock, the Birdmen, 3 o'clock is the Evil Empire, 4 o'clock we have the Spork, 5 o'clock is the Privateer, 6 we find the Solar Federation, 7 is the Robot, 8 is the Lizard, 9 we have the Crystals, 10 is the Fascist, and 11:30 we have the Colonies of Men. Up to the ship limit there was some wars going on, but not really very much. We had the Colonies of Men versus the Fascists. Their border dispute led to war, with the Colonies of Man having the initiative. But not much actual fighting happened, but from what I heard, at least on the fascist side, it impacted the economic build-up phase significantly. Likely it did the same for the Colonies of Man. So there was some economic damage. It ended with a truce. Bird versus Rebel. Here we had a skirmish with some action on both sides, but I think Bird had more initiative. However, it caused only minimal damage on either side, and also this ended with a truce rather quickly. Evil Empire, Borg and Privateer were also entangled in an early war, which was the prelude for the major conflict in this sector. More to come on this on the next slides. And who's missing? Solarfat, Robert, Liz and Crystal. They fought against nobody. So, looking at it, the whole sector was in early wars, fighting and weakening each other. Only the southwest remained calm, which may be a little bit surprising, especially as Lizard had Robert as one neighbor, but fact is, all remained peaceful, focusing on trade and economic buildup. As promised, let's have a look now at the central conflict of this game. I call it the Borg Wars. The Borg detected the privateer being his southern neighbor in turn 8. As communication failed, hostile intentions and preparations from the privateer against the Borg had to be assumed, which impacted the Borg's economic development options. Adding on this, the Borg was attacked by the Evil Empire in turn 13, even though a border and non-aggression pact was agreed earlier. A new truce was signed, but was broken again by the Evil Empire in turn 18, attacking Borg colonies and threatening the Borg homeworld. As in parallel, the privateer started in turn 16 with actively capturing Borg ships, forcing Borg to further increase his security. Economic damage was becoming significant, and Borg was quickly approaching deep trouble. It may be worth noting that, according to recent research, it seems the real puppet master behind this double attack was Commander Karski of the Solar Federation. Yes, the same guy who had this earlier presentation in this con. He's the one who propagated the kill the Borg attitude heavily from turn 1 on. Looking at the final outcome of the sector, This seems like justified. However, it may also have backfired, as we see later. Due to the privateer threat, the Borg was already in contact with fascists for trade of glory device ships. When the evil empire now backstabbed the Borg, relations were further deepened and fascists joined the war on the Borg side, with the idea of taking out the evil empire fast and then, ideally, turn on the privateer. To free the fascist fleet from the already mentioned war against colonies of men, the Borg started an initiative of peace talks between the two of them, which was taken up by both and led up to the truce. Now, due to the earlier trade of glory device ships for defense against the privateer, a channel connection had already been established. This allowed for a rapid redeployment of the fascist fleet. Of course, the base guarantee had to be that the Borg is always able to immediately channel back the fascist fleet, plus additional forces from the Borg, in case the fascist gets attacked. Even if that might have meant that the Borg would have had to give up his home and ask for asylum in the fascist backyard. So it was a risky deal, especially for the Borg, but it was forced by the circumstances. Now, in the fight against the evil empire, multiple other races and their ships were detected, helping the evil empire. However, mostly with the locally built ships. Only Bird was close enough that some Bird-built and owned ships were serving the evil empire, under control of Bird, still for availability of the cloak and intercept mission. Noteworthy were of course Gorby's and Solar Fed possession. The number was unclear at that time. Also seen were Lizard and robot ships. Note that the Rebel supported Evil Empire with free fighter building and Borg as well, and Lizard and Crystal. So it was LFM fighter building for pretty much everybody. The increasing pressure and first significant losses on the side of the Evil Empire finally led to their surrender. They gave most warships to the Solar Federation to continue binding the Borg and Fascist fleet for some more time in the Evil Empire area. In parallel, they landed their economy fleet, denying all easy priority build points, and burned their natives. With the ships under Solar Federation control still being around, mopping up of the area still took some time. 11 turns were needed until the Solar Federation fleet retreated back to the center. Meanwhile, the Solar Federation and Robert sent ships from their core through the center to put pressure on the Borg core. It was too late for helping the evil empire, but still causing worries on the Borg side. This led to three major consequences. First, the Birdman. He was now released from any obligations he had to the dead evil empire. So he joined the Borg and Fascist to stop the Solar Fed-centered alliance to steamroll over the Borg and then ultimately the rest of the sector wherever he pleased. This added Loki immune cloakers and towers and cloak and intercept to the coalition, so some very valuable tactical options. Second, a first contract between the Borg and the mercenaries that played Crystal was established for a basic protection of the Borg core by a web wall. And third, the Rebel was sending a small task force to help the Borg in case of a push of the Solar Fed into Borg core, which never happened, and they stayed as escorts for the remaining of the war. Let's make a short break from the Borg Wars, and let's have a look at the only other substantial conflict in this game. At turn 48, the Lizard decided to attack the Crystal and not the Robert, and got some support in this by colonies of men attacking Crystal from the north. The Lizard, with some superstar destroyers, progressed slowly but steadily through the Crystal territory, getting very close to Crystal's homeworld. The Crystal was in quite deep trouble, as he had no adequate defenses to protect his webs. Due to the threat of the Lizard colonies of Man alliance to continue that war after Crystal is defeated and attacking the fascists got worried and decided, together with the Borg, to help the Crystal to put the Lizard fleet to a halt or slow it down. To keep this concealed, the Borg rejected handing of actual biocides, but suggested Crystal to ask for a rush of the rebels, which was then channeled by the Borg to the Crystal. Some more help, including some mines and mine layers and glory device ships, and a borrowed MBR Meteor-class blockade runner, allowed Crystal to push back the colonies and slow down the Lizard until, for other reasons, the Lizard ruler was exchanged and a truce was made. On that MBR, you can ask some questions later. Effectively, the Lizard gained quite some planets from the Crystal, but lost also some valuable ships. The colonies of men just lost a couple of ships, and the Crystal lost some planets, but gained a few ships to ease the pain. Back to the Borg Wars. After the Evil Empire mob-up was finished and Solar Fed forces were forced to retreat out of the Evil Empire area, a natural move for Borg and Fascist would have been to channel their fleet south to the Privateer and attack him. Maybe foreseeing this, and having little trust in his privateer ally to hold against such an attack, Solarfed decided to invade the privateer and take its possessions and priority build points before Borg and Fascist could do. This was mostly successful, but the coalition was able to secure one privateer Meteor-class blockade runner for its purposes. The Fed invasion of the privateer territory led to a significant increase in Solar Federation's planet count and general threat level of the Solar Federation. As Lizard and colonies of men were already entangled in the war against Crystal, they could not do much to assist directly. However, they decided to positively reply to pleas from the Borg to support with colonies of men fighter sweeping against the robot mining. Additionally, to minimize the risk of Crystal joining on the hostile side, Borg extended the contract with the Crystal to support the offense against the Solar Federation. Actually, quite few occurrences were really using it, but one reckless maneuver of the Solar Fed could be exploited and led to the capture of a Solar Fed Meteor-class blockade runner. Due to the combination of the abilities of the coalition, the Solar Fed and his remaining ally Robert were tactically outmatched. As Solar Fed's attempts to break the coalition diplomatically failed, he surrendered finally. The Solar Federation set all his ships to be donated to the Borg, however, publicly announced that and pre-announced it to his friends, so it was unavoidable that the Robert and others would force quite some Solar Federation ships to surrender. To avoid a conflict with the Robert, which might have ended him giving all his carriers and many of the Solar Fed ultimately to the Lizard, creating overstrong carriers again with almost the same power as Solar Federation carriers, a split was agreed between the coalition and the Robert, and carried out faithfully by both sides. For unknown reasons, the Robert denied the truce offered, a mistake ultimately. We also see here an overview of the Solar Federation ship list in turn 60 and in turn 96. You see, all in this war, actually just a few ships really were lost to the Solar Federation. It was really a huge fleet, but due to the tactical combination of the abilities of the coalition, the Solar Federation was never able to employ his fleet and just had to pull back. So we are approaching the end of the game. Let's see how this worked out. After the Solar Federation surrendered, the main purpose of the coalition was fulfilled. So the rebel withdrew from the coalition, the colonies of men stopped sweeping, so he basically also withdrew, and the contract with the crystal expired and was not followed up. Still, the core of the coalition, so the Borg, the Fascist, and the Bird, managed to stick together and pursue the earlier defined goal to take the top 3 positions. A fire cloud flying through very deep space to the back of the Lizard's area, opening an invasion path into his undefended core, forced the Lizard to accept an offer of vassalage in exchange for a guarantee to support his 4th place. As now the problem of Lizards gaining a significant carrier fleet with 150% hull damage resistance solved, and as the earlier offer of truce was rejected by the Robert, and as well as a demand of surrender was rejected, the coalition now attacked the Robert. In parallel, the colonies of men lost some planets to attacks of opportunity by the Crystal, the Lizard, and the Rebel, and quickly approached the fight or fail limit and being removed from the game. Shortly after, the Robert was conquered and was removed as well. The Rebel then started losing planets to Crystal and Bird and fell below the now rapidly increasing fight or fail limit quickly. Shortly after, Lizard and Crystal executed a coordinated exit of the game in the same turn. And that's it. Borg arranged for a quick takeover of almost all Lizard planets in the final turn to give his early game savior, the Fascist, a chance at second place. And while it got very tight, the Fascist actually came in second and the Birdman third. And the Borg won the game. Borg wins. All hail City Alpha 2 and Emperor Zacha. Hail, hail, hail. And remember, resistance is futile.